So Kaiju number 8 is currently sweeping, I guess, all the nations. In terms of new anime coming out this season, Kaiju number 8 is undoubtedly the most successful. And that kind of thing is to be expected. I mean, Kaiju number 8 is one of the most popular manga on Earth right now. Of course, the anime adaptation, even though I hate the way their faces look, is gonna be massively popular. And while we've already done videos explaining everything that an anime-only person would need to know before getting into the anime, I'm sure a lot of people who are just keeping up with the anime are starting to have a couple of questions. Like, how is Kafka ever gonna get strong even though he can only access 1% of his suit's potential? Will Kafka ever reveal the fact that he's Kaiju number 8 to the Defense Corps? And maybe, more importantly, and probably the question being asked more than any other question currently, is who is this long, gangly Kaiju who's capable of speech and switching its appearance? See, because those of you who watched my video breaking down everything you need to know before heading into the anime, you'll know that if a kaiju has the ability to talk, that it is an incredibly powerful kaiju. On top of that, a general golden rule is the more humanoid the kaiju, the more powerful. And this kaiju has both of those things going for it. And to those of you who've been paying particularly close attention, you'll know that if a kaiju hits a certain threshold of strength, then that becomes an identified kaiju. Well, it's more to do with the difficulty of exterminating said kaiju, but still, that usually goes hand in hand with strength. And now that this long, gangly, capable of speech and capable of transformation kaiju has appeared in front of the Defense Corps, revived a bunch of kaiju, and made a huge problem for everybody while also escaping into the night, the majority of you have probably been able to suss out the fact that this is Kaiju number 9. But who is Kaiju number 9? Are they important to the story? Will we see them again? And what are their powers? Well, what all of you anime-only fans don't know is that you've just been introduced to the final boss of this manga. Or at least the final boss to this arc. Because mind you, Kaiju number 8 is only 105 chapters into its manga run. And of those 105 chapters, Kaiju number 8 is the primary antagonist. A kaiju capable of transformation, resurrection, and absorption, Kaiju number 9 presents itself as the only legitimate threat to the Defense Corps. Between its borderline unlimited potential for change and its massive intellect, Kaiju number 9 is a real problem in the Kaiju number 8 universe. And today, I want to tell you all about Kaiju number 9. Its abilities, its perceived motivations, and more than anything, its role in the story. Which is why today we're talking Kaiju number 8's final boss explained. But before we get to explaining anything, guys, please, for me, like this video, subscribe to the page, and hit that noti bell. And if you love the idea of me talking about Kaiju number 8, you're gonna love my anime podcast, Otaku's Anonymous, where me and Danny Mata break down everything that happens in anime and manga. This week, it's available on YouTube, Spotify, and Apple Podcasts. And if you want to see me talk about anime and manga live, come on down to Comic Palooza this Memorial Day weekend in Houston, Texas, May 24th to the 26th. We're gonna be talking about anime and being a YouTuber and so much more. But before we get into all that, guys, today I want to talk about a brand new sponsor to the page, Warby Parker. See, as you guys know, I wear glasses. They're not prescription. They're blue light. Yes, I can see, but I don't love these glasses. They're a sake of convenience. They were $8. And so I'm always looking for better quality, better looking glasses. And genuinely, I feel as though every single time I find a pair of glasses I really like, they're several $100s, and I feel like the quality's not up to par. Well, fortunately, Warby Parker has walked into my life. See, when it comes down to all things eyeballs, Warby Parker's got you covered. Whether you need blue lights, contact lenses, sunglasses, Warby Parker is there for you. And genuinely, it's never been easier to get a pair of Warby Parkers that you love. Because Warby Parker has a free home try-on program that allows you to select 5 pairs of glasses to try on at home and see if you like the way they look. And today, I want to walk you through a couple of my selections. See, Warby Parker knows that every single one of us has a beautiful and unique face. And before you jump in with a brand new set of glasses, you should see what they look like on that beautiful and unique face. You can see if you want to go for a thicker rim than usual, and trust me when I say these are much more high quality than the ones I was previously wearing. You can see if you want to go for a thinner, more wiry, maybe more educated frame than you had prior. One of these glasses might look as though they're too thin and they might feel cheap. Trust me when I tell you, I have the utmost confidence in the structural integrity of these frames right here. And maybe, just maybe, you've worn the same shape of glasses your entire life, so you want to switch up your shape a little bit and see how that would look. Let's just say, I don't mind the new shape. But here's the thing, while I crushed it in my selection, at least with the 3 pairs you've seen me put on thus far, I got a 4th pair where I definitely did not crush it in the selection. As you can see, these are a bit small. But imagine that I fell in love with this pair and I saw it online and I ordered it for myself, only for it to arrive at my doorstep and realize too small. That's the beauty of this try-at-home program. So you can try on 5 pairs of glasses that you love in the comfort of your own home, get everybody's reactions, snap a couple of pictures, see what's most popular, and then send all those pairs back to Warby Parker and order the pair that you love online. All with the confidence and the knowledge knowing that you got the best pair of glasses you possibly could have. So what are you guys waiting for? Go to warbyparker.com/weebcommander and get your pair of glasses today. And then maybe, just maybe, you can look this good. So, Kaiju number 9, the titular main antagonist of the Kaiju number 8 manga, a character shrouded in mystery whose motivations we just began to understand. Kaiju number 9 is an identified kaiju, the first identified kaiju to appear after Kafka. But Kaiju number 9 is very different from Kafka, as Kaiju number 9 is just a kaiju. There's no human about it outside of its humanoid shape. However, that does make Kaiju number 9 the first identified kaiju outside of Kafka to have a humanoid shape. As identified kaijus 1 through 7 were all just kaiju looking monsters that look like some variation of Godzilla. On top of this, Kaiju number 9 is the first identified kaiju outside of Kafka that has the ability to communicate. But when it comes down to things that separate Kaiju number 9 from the rest of all other identified kaiju, the list does not stop at can talk and also has 2 legs. See, Kaiju number 9, kind of like Kafka, has the ability to change its appearance. However, unlike Kafka, Kaiju number 9 has the ability to change its appearance to whatever human face it wants, so long as it's come into contact with and understands the form of the human it's trying to replicate, while Kafka simply has the ability to switch back into his original human form. If this is the first identified kaiju threat capable of independent thought, then what does Kaiju number 9 want? See, all other identified kaiju, we can simply say, oh, they came up to the surface and wanted to reclaim it for themselves, so they started destroying things. And the motivation for Kaiju number 9 is eerily similar to that, except for the fact that it goes about this process in a much more strategic and human way. See, Kaiju number 9 has a rather interesting personality that keys us in to what its core motivations are. It's a cold and calm individual that makes multi-level plans to try and crack the defenses of the defense core while also achieving exactly what it wants. And while Kaiju number 9 is absolutely ruthless and will not hesitate to kill anybody it comes into combat against, it doesn't kill needlessly. In fact, it often spares innocent bystanders. That's because Kaiju number 9's core motivation isn't to destroy the surface and all humans, it's to destroy the defense force specifically, and in the process of destroying the defense force, regain the kaiju power that they use to fight the kaiju. Now, the logical conclusion to come to when I tell you there's a kaiju that specifically wants to destroy the defense force, the one thing protecting humanity from the kaiju, is to say, oh, okay, it just wants to get rid of humanity's protectors so that it can go in and wipe out the rest of humanity. Well, we can't really say as to whether or not that's its real motivations, because like I've already said, there's been moments in the manga where Kaiju number 8 specifically spared innocent bystanders, only ever opting for a violent approach when it came to Defense Corp individuals. People, like myself, theorize that the real reason that Kaiju number 8 finds itself in opposition to the Defense Corps is because the Defense Corps uses kaiju power. See, one of the less talked about aspects of Kaiju number 8 that I believe could play a central role in Kaiju number 8's second half, if it doesn't end with Kaiju number 9's defeat, is that Kaiju number 9 knows what happens at the factories that make the Defense Corps suits and guns. See, because for those of you who are anime only for Kaiju number 8 or didn't read the manga 4 times like me, you may not know that within the Kaiju number 8 universe, there exists a company by the name of Izumo Tech. And Izumo Tech is responsible for the creation of the Kaiju Fiber Defense Corps suits. The suits that allow Defense Corps officers, platoon leaders, and captains to tap into a certain percentage of kaiju power. And thus the Defense Corps essentially fights back against kaiju with their own power. And it's that power that Kaiju number 9 wants to return, possibly to kaiju kind. Because even though technically, so far as we know, these kaiju fibers are only ever taken off dead kaijus, the creation of high-level suits that allow for humans to tap into the power of kaijus could be something that upsets Kaiju number 9. Or there could be some nefarious underdealings that Kaiju number 9 is privy to while the rest of the Defense Corps isn't. Now, this would be akin to something like the Fire Force twist, where it was revealed that the Holy Soul Temple are actually the bad guys. And as it currently stands, this is nothing more than a theory. But it is also technically the best explanation we have for why Kaiju number 9 is so singularly focused on reacquiring the kaiju power used by the Defense Corps. But enough about Kaiju number 9's motivations. Let's talk about the real reason you're here, Kaiju number 9's powers. See, while it's been made relatively clear that Kaiju number 9 already has some kind of resurrection ability that brings Kaiju back stronger than they were when they were alive the first time, outside of that and the ability to fire some kind of air bullet that punches through Kikaru Shinomiya's suit, we don't appear to know that much about Kaiju number 9's powers. Trust me when I say resurrection and air bullets are not all Kaiju number 9 can do. See, Kaiju number 9 right now in the manga is by far and away the strongest Kaiju we've ever seen, Kafka included. But that statement might make a couple of you who are watching rather closely scratch your head, because when Kaiju number 9 first appears in the Defense Corps' practical exam, it clocks in with a fortitude level of 8.5, which wouldn't actually even be strong enough to make it an identified Kaiju just based off fortitude reading, as the identified Kaiju threshold is usually above 9.0, though it would make it a Dai Kaiju, the highest ranking of Kaiju outside of identified, which would explain why Kikaru Shinomiya, who can only tap into about 40% of her Kaiju suit during the practical exam, which is the average level of a platoon leader in the Defense Corps, the position above officer, wasn't strong enough to take on Kaiju number 9 by herself, because there is only a handful, and by a handful I mean anywhere between 6 and 10 people in the entirety of the Defense Corps who are able to take on an identified Kaiju by themselves. It's actually a big issue in the Defense Corps, though a lot of the people who end up eventually being strong enough to take on an identified Kaiju in a one-on-one battle were in that practical exam and are not currently strong enough to do that. But this 8.5 magnitude reading is why Kaiju number 9 is able to hang with Kafka, even for a little bit, before it slips away and runs back to its Kaiju cleanup job. But does Kaiju number 9 stay at a magnitude of 8.5 forever? No. Like I already stated, Kaiju number 9 is currently in the manga the strongest Kaiju we've ever seen. That means that Kaiju number 9 falls into the ballpark, or possibly outside of the ballpark, of Kaiju number 8, Kafka, who during the practical exam clocks in at a magnitude of 9.8. And while this might sound crazy to you, believe it or not, over the course of this entire manga, Kafka gets stronger, but so does Kaiju number 9. Because Kaiju number 9 has powers, well, Kafka just kind of learns martial arts. So let's dive into what some of those powers are. See, Kaiju number 9 has incredible strength, durability, and reflexes, which is kind of just standard for an identified level Kaiju, but obviously Kaiju number 9 takes it up a notch. See, Kaiju number 9 has banged with some of the most physically powerful people in the entirety of the Kaiju number 8 universe, as there is a moment in this manga where Kaiju number 9 finds itself in a battle against the head of the Defense Corps, who was one of the greatest captains in the history of the Defense Corps, but now resides as the head of the Defense Corps, which means technically he should be the strongest person in the Defense Corps. And pretty much everything we know about him proves that point. And yet Kaiju number 9 is able to tank multiple full-powered shots from this man. On top of this, Kaiju number 9 is incredibly fast, so fast that it can literally deflect bullets fired from a Kaiju-built assault rifle and move faster than platoon leader level soldiers in the Defense Corps can track with their eyes. But let's get more into the abilities that make Kaiju number 9 unique, like its ability to shapeshift that we've already seen. But here's the thing, Kaiju number 9's shape-shifting ability goes well beyond it just being able to take the form of a human, because if Kaiju number 9 can turn its monstrous body into that of a human, there's basically no limits to what it can do with its shape-shifting. So leads to Kaiju number 9 throughout the story hiding and manifesting its eyes on different parts of its bodies, and I say bodies for a specific reason we'll get to in a second. It can grow extra limbs at will, and can even shed its skin to make a more powerful version of itself. Yes, that's right, Kaiju number 9 can molt, and every time it molts, it gets more powerful. On top of this, its shape-shifting abilities allow for it to morph, elongate, and stretch any parts of its body, whether that's to increase its range, dodge an attack, or fit into a space. That is to say that Kaiju number 9 has complete anatomic level control over its own body, which is why it's able to use the ability you saw it use against Kikaru Shinomiya, which is known as detachment. See, this is the most frequently used offensive ability we see from Kaiju number 9, an ability that sees it firing off chunks of its index finger like a bullet. And the speed at which these chunks fire out of Kaiju number 9's body is enough to pierce through a Defense Corps suit, which mind you are made from Kaiju fibers and are incredibly durable. But that's just about where this ability tops out, as these bullets have been shown to be ineffective against people like Kafka in his Kaiju form. On top of this complete and total anatomic control of its body allows for Kaiju number 9 to metamorphosize. That is to say that Kaiju number 9 can take the appearance of anything it consumes, usually humans. On top of taking the appearance of any humans it consumes, though, it also has the ability to assimilate the memories of any human it consumes, which means if Kaiju number 9 eats you, it can replace you. But the idea of memories applies to a lot more than just remembering when your girlfriend's birthday is. It also applies to any confidential information you had, battle strategies, your martial martial arts. Basically, if Kaiju number 9 eats you, it's able to assimilate all of your skills and knowledge. But it doesn't stop there. See, for those of you who have already watched the practical exam happen, you'll know that Kaiju number 9 has a weird control over other kaiju. And this weird control over other kaiju doesn't just stop with the ability to resurrect them, though that is important and we'll talk about it in a second. But Kaiju number 9 also has the ability to fuse its body with the bodies of other kaiju, and through this fusion enter a more powerful form. And this fusion ability applies to all kaiju, be they simple Yoju types with a magnitude of under 3 or identified class kaiju. Kaiju number 9 has the ability to fuse and therefore assimilate with any and all kaiju. And if that wasn't enough for you, Kaiju number 9 also has the ability to make clones of itself that it refers to as Beta and Gamma that are supposed to be as powerful as the original body. That is to say that Kaiju number 9, one of the strongest kaijus in the history of humanity, has the ability to duplicate itself twice at maximum power. But let's take a step back and talk about that complete and total control that Kaiju number 9 has over other kaiju. Because like we already touched on, Kaiju number 9 has healing abilities, at least so far as they apply to healing kaiju. And those healing abilities can not only apply to other kaiju, but Kaiju number 9 itself. See, Kaiju number 9 has the ability to resurrect dead kaiju, bringing them back more powerful than they were when they were alive. The general rule of thumb is that Kaiju number 9 brings back these kaiju about twice as powerful as they were when they were alive. That is to say, if there was a Honju with a magnitude of 3.2, it would come back as a 6.4-ish. However, Kaiju number 9 can't do this endlessly. There is a limit to how many Kaiju number 9 can bring back to life in a singular day, because bringing kaiju back to life requires a substantial amount of energy. And the same can be said for when that healing is applied to Kaiju number 9. See, because Kaiju number 9 has a regeneration ability, and while all kaijus have a regeneration ability of sorts, Kaiju number 9's takes it to a new level, as Kaiju number 9 can go so far as to regenerate a decapitated head. Though, if Kaiju number 9 takes multiple absolutely devastating blows in a back-to-back kind of fashion that all require a fair amount of regeneration, then its regeneration will slow down as it runs out of energy. But Kaiju number 9's complete total control over kaiju does not stop there. In fact, Kaiju number 9 has an ability that no other kaiju has ever had before, at least so far as we know. And that ability is the ability to make other kaiju, and not just throw away Honju and Yoju. No. Kaiju number 9 has the ability to make identified class kaiju, with fortitudes as high as 8.5 and up, meaning that Kaiju number 9 has the ability to make kaiju as strong as itself. In fact, Kaiju number 9 has such a mastery over making kaiju that the first kaiju it ever makes, which it considers a prototype, when it's first measured, clocks in with a fortitude of 8.3. However, over the course of the fight that it has, it eventually rises to a fortitude of 9.0, meaning that this prototype technically becomes 0.5 stronger than Kaiju number 9 first clocked in when its fortitude was measured. And every single one of the kaiju that Kaiju number 9 creates requires a captain class or vice captain class fighter to take on, which is why the Defense Corps not having a ton of people who are able to take on identified class kaiju by themselves kind of becomes a bit of an issue. On top of this, Kaiju number 9 has something known as Kaiju Kinesis, which allows for Kaiju number 9 to move the corpses of dead kaiju with its mind. Now, while this is never necessarily used in a crazy high-level kind of way, it does lead to Kaiju number 9 multiple times using the corpses of a dead kaiju to block incoming attacks, and also plays into the idea that Kaiju number 9, for some reason or another, has complete and total control over all things kaiju, which leads many to believe that Kaiju number 9 is actually the entity that made all kaiju, the progenitor of the species, if you will, which would explain why it's so upset about humans taking its kaiju power, as it is responsible for the creation of kaiju power. On top of this, Kaiju number 9 also has an ability known as camouflage space, which essentially allows Kaiju number 9 to create a domain expansion of sorts around it that cuts out all radio frequencies from entering in or going out. This stops people who are close to Kaiju number 9 being able to communicate to people far away from Kaiju number 9 about its location, ensuring that if Kaiju number 9 needs to get away, it will most of the time. And those are just all of the abilities that Kaiju number 9 seemed to have by being Kaiju number 9. But earlier when I said that Kaiju number 9 had the ability to assimilate and fuse with any kaiju, be they a Yoju or an identified class, I say that because we've seen Kaiju number 9 assimilate with two separate kaiju. One is a simple ant-type Yoju with a fortitude of below 3 that Kaiju number 9 fuses with to give itself ant legs, while the other is one of the most powerful kaiju in history. Kaiju number 2. See, Kaiju number 2 appeared in Japan in 1972 and was so powerful it almost destroyed the entirety of Sapporo, the biggest city in Hokkaido. And while Kaiju number 2 was never referred to as the king of kaiju like Kaiju number 6, Kaiju number 2 was an immensely powerful kaiju with a profound sense of pride. And when it was killed by the Defense Corps in 1972, it was identified as such a powerful kaiju that its body should not be wasted, and thus it was made into a numbers weapon. Weapons that are made out of identified class kaiju. Now, Kaiju number 2, while it was alive, had 2 attacks that separated it from other kaiju. Sonic attacks, which allowed for it to increase the range of its physical attacks by adding sonic waves onto the end of them, and energy emission, which allowed it to release highly destructive energy, kind of like electricity, from its mouth. And thus, the weapon made from Kaiju number 2's body has the ability to launch sonic attacks to increase the range of the blows being thrown, and it also has the ability to release a massive amount of energy from the suit that can be directed at an opponent for a long-range attack. But since Kaiju number 9 can assimilate all the abilities of anything or anybody it consumes, after consuming Kaiju number 2, it got this sonic blast and this energy emission ability. And while I could get into the specifics of every single identified kaiju the Kaiju number 9's ever made, or all the fights that Kaiju number 9 has been in, that puts us pretty deeply into spoiler territory.
Oh, says the guy who just said he absorbed Kaiju number 2.
That doesn't become a spoiler for a long time. In fact, pretty much as soon as that becomes a spoiler, it's gonna be spoiled for you. So yeah, that's pretty much everything you need to know about Kaiju number 9 in the least spoiler way possible. Now, will we do a how strong is Kaiju number 9 video at some point and actually scale him based on spoiler feats? Absolutely. But for the moment, this is a catch-all for all of you anime onlys out there, or just those of you who haven't read the manga in a little while and wanted a wee refresher. Fun fact, wee refresher is exactly what R. Kelly's bedroom. I'm gonna stop now. But if you guys are hyped to see how Kaiju number 9's story plays out in the Kaiju number 8 anime, tell me in the comments below. And while you guys are down there, please, for me, like this video, subscribe to the page, and hit that noti bell. You have no idea how many times I accidentally called Kaiju number 8, Kaiju number 9, and Kaiju number 9, Kaiju number 8. And probably I didn't catch them all, but I caught way more than were in that video.